But let's talk about some of the guys that decided to go back to school. And I think that the one that took most by surprise was probably Kyle Filipowski. Kyle Filipowski, for what it's worth, from what I know, this had been discussed as a real potential outcome basically since like for a while. Like there was never any clarity that Kyle Filipowski was going to be in this draft. Other guys that have already declared, I've known for a while they were going to be in this class, right? It's just kind of the way that the world works. When I'm talking to agents all the time, I'm talking to insiders, I'm talking to sources on the team side. You kind of get a feel for who's going to be in this class and who's going to not be in this class. Kyle Filipowski was a very real question mark in terms of whether or not he was going to stay or go, basically even after he'd already broken out at Duke. And the answer I'd gotten was he really loves college, and they're a real, let's just be 100% about, let's be 100 about this, right? There are real opportunities for being like a very high profile, like white kid at Duke in terms of the NIL market, right? So he is always been someone that was on the borderline of staying or going. I think he likely would have been a first round pick had he decided to come out. I also think Kyle Filipowski's defense is kind of underrated. And I think that as teams would have gone down the road of evaluating and scouting him, you would have seen that you would have gotten more discussion about that. I thought that his mobility this year in space was a little bit better than what people thought. There's a lot more Kelly Olynyk to his game than there is like, stiff white dude you can't move to his game. And he is now going to lead the Duke Blue Devils next season, along with Tyrese Proctor. And for as much as Kyle Filipowski has gotten the headlines in regard to his 2023 NBA draft decision, I will have Tyrese Proctor higher on my board next year, entering the draft. I really, truly thought that if Tyrese Proctor had tried his luck in this draft, I thought there was a pretty good shot he would have gone like 25th overall. I know that he started the season poorly. I know that the full season numbers do not look awesome in terms of efficiency. By the end of the season, his defensive play, some of the things he did in terms of in ball screen actions as a scorer had drastically improved.
Yes.
His playmaking out of ball screens has always been there. He is like a 6'4" to 6'5" lead guard who can defend, who wants to defend, who does have real skills with the ball in his hands. There are some growth opportunities for him, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But I think Tyrese Proctor is going to be a lottery pick in 2024. I do. I think that we're going to look at him as the guy that returned to college basketball that was the critical decision of all of them throughout this process.
I co-sign that. And I have been such a Proctor defender this entire season because Duke's offense was not set up to put him in a position where his pick and roll playmaking popped. What he needed to get better at was obviously his three-point shooting and the reliability behind the arc and having some way to score with the ball in his hands when he's attacking the basket. I think he found that at the end of the year. He has this crafty kind of mid-range game, this step back, this almost spin move into a jump shot that he gets to. Really, really smart, cerebral player on both ends of the floor, but super young. Really would have been young for this draft class to the point where going back to school next year, we're going to look at him and we're going to say, oh, that's a young sophomore who's gotten so much better already, has positional size, feel, plays well on both ends. What are we missing here? I mean, this is a guy who's tailor-made to shoot up those draft boards. I think that's a really good call.
Yeah, I truly think that Tyrese is going to be, I don't know if he'll be an All-American next season. I think Kyle Filipowski certainly will be an All-American next season. I really do think that Tyrese is going to be the guy that we look at as leading Duke to that top 5 mark. He's like the X factor. Like we know Filipowski is going to go for like 18 and 10 next year and just be absolutely tremendous, right? Tyrese is the guy that's going to take the biggest leap, in my opinion, in terms of what his game looks like, because we saw it in the second half of the season. We saw what it looks like. We saw what he is capable of. And oh, by the way, I do think Kyle Filipowski has a real chance to go in the lottery as well. I'll probably have him at like 14 entering next season. I'll have Tyrese at like 9 or 10, but I will have Filipowski at, 14 or so. And I think Filipowski is going to have a tremendous season. The other big addition is that they get back Mark Mitchell.
Yes.
And Mark Mitchell is a guy that had a very strong defensive season for Duke. Ultimately, the question is about what his offensive fit is at the next level. He's not really a shooter right now. He can kind of handle the ball, but not really at the level he needs to yet for the NBA. There are some real skills there that I think will lead to him being a high-level player. And I think he will play in the NBA at some point. He's really tough, really physical, really aggressive. And as soon as that shot comes along, I think he is going to be really, really good. The thing about Duke next year, including Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski, Tyrese Proctor, all three of those guys are tough, man. And they're also getting in Sean Stewart. I don't know how much you've seen of Sean Stewart, man. Like, that dude's physical as hell.
Yeah.
Like, that dude plays like a tough brand of basketball, like in a way that is like fun to watch. They also get in Jared McCain, Caleb Foster, TJ Power, skilled freshmen that I think are high level. Guys like Jaden Shutt should be able to bring high level shooting to the team next season. They have the toughness, the physicality, they have the skill level. I do genuinely think Duke should be the number one team entering next season. I'm not sure it's all that close, given that they actually have some real older players that will be a part of their roster.
Yeah, this is going to be a power to watch out for in college basketball, and I really like Mark Mitchell long term. I think he was super raw this year and gave them as much as he could on the defensive end. But if we're talking long term with the skills and fluidity, this is my Coach Spin's hot take of the day. I much prefer him to a guy like Noah Clowney out of Alabama. I think that the defensive impact, the skill with the ball in his hands is a little bit more intriguing to me.
I think people are getting a little ahead of themselves with Noah Clowney. Just a little bit. Like I'm intrigued, like 25 to 45 is where I'm at on Noah Clowney. I've seen him creep into like the teens in some places. Yeah. I like him as a 25 to 45 guy for sure. That's more where I'm seeing it right now. Any other thoughts on Duke before we move on?
No, I think that their roster is going to pop a little bit more because they're not trying to play six bigs at the same time, and they'll have real three-point shooting around Proctor, Filipowski, and Mitchell. I think it's much better designed next year, and I'm really looking forward to see the evolution of John Shire as a coach. I grew up a Duke fan, love what the Blue Devils have always kind of done to maximize who they are. And I think Shire got so much better as a coach throughout the season and figured out what buttons to press with his team. But hopefully this roster with as much talent and a better fit on paper, so to speak, he won't have to wait as long to figure out what those buttons are.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought John was pretty good this year, to be honest.
He was great.
Like I genuinely do. I thought that he had a good feel for when to make adjustments, and I thought that later in the season he had a good feel for what buttons to press in terms of like defensive identity and things like that to get the most out of guys like Derek Lively.